All right, boils and ghouls. So last week we talked about Possession, the first movie in the Decades of Crazy Bitches tetralogy. I still can't say it seriously because it's fucking stupid. But The Loved Ones from 2009 is now the second one. And then we got Misery and what I told you into the Possession. I can never think of the other. May from 2002. It always comes a second later. May and Misery are going to be the two remaining ones after this. Now, this is probably the least known, I know it is, of all four of these movies because I never hear it really brought up. I do every now and then, but it's still relatively unknown, but it has a little bit of a cult following. Now, it's an Australian film, and what's her name? Robin McLeavy, who plays the crazy bitch in this movie named Lola. Now, I haven't seen this movie in quite a while, but I remember when it came out, or maybe it was a year or so after. It was during a time that I was like using IFC on demand and renting a lot of movies on there, and because IFC always had great stuff. I don't know if it was IFC, but if it wasn't, it was some other on-demand thing. But I saw this movie, and then a year or two later or so was Excision. And I adore that movie. The only reason that didn't make the four for the tetralogy here is because I already did a video on it. So if you want to hear my thoughts on that, if you've ever seen Excision, if you haven't, definitely check that movie out. But this one, we have Lola is the main character here. And she asks her crush to go to, it's like prom, basically. I think they call it something else, but it's basically prom. That's all you really have to put in your head to get a mental image. And she gets turned down, like politely. But since she's nuts, she ends up taking this guy that she likes captive with her crazy father. And the whole house is decorated like prom. And she ends up having her prom. There is nothing that's derailing this bitch from getting exactly what she wants and getting her prom the way she wants it. And the way she wants it is really disturbing. Now, this is an Australian film. I don't know any of these people outside of this movie. And the main guy, I think, doesn't he have a role in one of the Twilight movies? I haven't seen those movies in forever. I think that the guy that she takes captive plays somebody in one of them, if not, maybe, probably multiple Twilight movies. Everybody else I've never seen before. But they give great performances, especially Lola, the main chick. I mean, she really sells how deranged she is. But if any of you, and when I start with like anger like that, you know, and then usually it's in the bloopers, that I fucked up somehow. And either laughed at something stupid that came out of my mouth, or it was just not English. It wasn't language. So then I get really pissed when I gotta do like a second, third take on anything. But it's nothing to do with this movie. If you haven't seen it, you've gotten enough information to go in pretty much without any real spoilers. So check it out. I don't think it's streaming anywhere for free, except for like Look Movie, which is exactly what I'm watching it on. But it's on the major streaming services. You gotta rent it, which it is worth a rent. Like, absolutely. So let's dive in to the second crazy bitch movie in the tetralogy, The Loved Ones from 2009. One thing I'll start with, because you can't forget it when you watch this movie, because they make goddamn sure they drill this goddamn pop song into your head until you feel lobotomized, just like the characters get lobotomized in this movie. It's this terrible, like, bubbly pop song, and it starts the movie off, and she's in her room, and you hear this song so much throughout this movie. I don't know if it's an actual song, or they just, like, someone wrote it for this movie. I think it might have been an actual song, but if somebody did write it for this movie, they were super proud of it. Alright, so remember when I said that scene with her in the room with the annoying music starts the movie? Forget all that. I told you, I haven't seen this in a while. We have Trent, the guy I'm pretty sure is from Twilight, driving the car with his father in the passenger seat. And he gets distracted that his father is smoking a cigarette. He thought he quit, but he says, like, no, I'm still sneaking one now and then. And while he's distracted looking at his father, there's a guy in the road who we come to find out later was another victim of Lola's that kind of escaped. So he ends up swerving to not hit this guy and crashes the car and ends up killing his father. He survives. So he is going through immense guilt. So then it's 6 months later, and this is when they're having the dance, prom, whatever it is, and you see Trent, and obviously he doesn't want to do anything. He doesn't even want to go to a dance. And it's obvious he's mad guilt-ridden for accidentally killing his father. And he has a very supportive girlfriend. And then his friend is there. I hate this in the majority of movies. Unless, let me explain it first before I say the exceptions. You see the hot girl coming down the hallway that the friend of Trent likes. And then there's rock and roll and metal guitar music. And we get it. She's a hot person. I don't like that. In most movies, and now the exceptions, if it's used in a comedic way, like that they're daydreaming and they're hearing that music and then they, in some hilarious way, get knocked out of it, that could sometimes work. But they just put the music to her walking and that's it. The guy who likes her is looking at her. It's just a thing with me. I just don't like that. And then he ends up going after her, and then he screams out, she said yes, which if you saw this friend and then you see this girl, I don't know about any of that, but it's not all about looks. It's the beauty inside, right? And then we have Lola that we see for the first time come up to Trent, and she's a very pretty girl. She looks normal, but all the crazy ones look normal. And she asks him to the dance. Remember what I said? And he politely turns her down. He has a girlfriend. So he just says, I'm going with Holly, his girlfriend. Sorry, Lola. That's all this guy does. But again, it doesn't matter because this woman's insane. So then Brent and his girlfriend, Holly, end up leaving the school. And he says to her, guess who just asked me to the dance? She says, who? He's like, no, guess. And she asks again. They're walking to their car. And then it cuts to them banging in their car. And then she asks him again, who is it? Or tell me now. Seriously? They went that long? He kept it from her? For what reason? And I'm still going to wait to see if they explain it before I really go off on how stupid it is. Because then, nice tits on Holly, by the way. Long sex scene in the car. And then, she keeps trying to arouse him and stuff to get the answer out of him. And he's still saying, I'll never tell. And then that's right, he self-harms himself now and cuts himself. He has a razor blade necklace. Which, that's kind of dangerous, right? But he doesn't care, I guess, because he cuts himself. And then she's about to give him a blowjob. And he still won't tell. That's when he says, I'll never tell. It's sensitive information, he says. And then she continues, and then he ends up, the windows are fogged up, and then you get a cool little shot of Lola outside watching them, creepily, but they don't know that. Alright, so confirmation. There's no real reason. He gets out of the car with her, and then he decides to tell her, and says it's Lola. And then she just laughs, and she says you should go with her, maybe she won't mind having emotionally something fucked up boyfriend. She insults him, basically, and then drives away. So what was the whole reason to hide that information from her when there's no history between them? She laughs it off. So I don't know. And this is a good movie, just to clarify. It just starts off with some stupidity here. So yeah, I like how they show all the guilt that Trent is going through. He comes home and his mom comes in. She tells him, after she asks how is he getting to school and back, that she doesn't want him to ride with his girlfriend because she doesn't even have a license. So, the whole car thing, obviously he crashed the car. She doesn't want him in any type of car, but she says she'll give him, money for a taxi. And he says that it's still a car. And she said it's safer. And then he ends up saying, didn't make a difference for his dad. So all the guilt that he portrays in this movie, it hits you a bit. And then he goes for a walk with his dog, and he wants to kill himself. And at the last minute, he decides against it. But the way he goes about doing this is he climbs up a cliff, like from the bottom, and climbs all the way up, like, not all the way, but enough that you would die if you let go. And that was his plan, to let go and just fall backwards. But if you wanted to end it, and his life was so difficult, as I can imagine him going through all this, usually when you're done, you're done. Like, you're done with everything. Why would he want to climb up a cliff as the last thing he does? That sounds like a lot of work. There's no easier way. There are that he could have done that. But again, whatever. He decides not to. Well, he kind of slips and then grabs on. And then you could see, like, he's relieved that it didn't happen. So then he's sitting there and he calls his mom. And somebody, a male, comes up behind him and knocks him out. And his mom hears this. Like, she hears the sound, and then the phone is instantly dropped on the ground and closed. So she knows that something just happened that's out of the ordinary. The cinematography is good in this movie, and all the outdoor locations, because it's in Australia, which is a fucking beautiful place. I've never been, but I've seen pictures. Then we have a little scene with the friend of Brent and the real hot girl that said yes to it. And let me clarify again, the looks don't matter. I just don't buy it in this movie. Sorry. Here's the pictures. Then, if I remember right, and yeah, I don't remember this movie as well as I thought I did, because that scene with her in her bedroom with the annoying song, we're 20 minutes into this movie, that scene still hasn't come yet. And then isn't there like a weird, like they have a very weird chemistry in this movie, like the friend and the girl, the hot girl he's with. I don't know what name, but she's like a hot goth girl. Like, she wears all black and even makes a joke with his roses. I tried to find him in black, and it doesn't go over that well with the parents. And then they drive off to prom. But then they end up, like, weirdly fucking in the car, like, outside of prom after getting high or something like that. Like, everybody smokes pot in this movie. And, again, like, she looks miserable. Like, she doesn't want to be there or anything. And then there's a funny line, though, that he gives. She asks, do you still have some of that pot on you? And he's like, yeah. He's like, I have it hidden. It's like, that's why your dog was sniffing my nuts. That's funny. And then he says, I just didn't want you to think I have a hygiene problem. And she comes out and says, why? Like, you think I'm going to suck your cock? So there's such a weird barrier there between them. And even before that conversation, it seemed like they were driving for a while without saying a word. Then we see the father of Lola pull up the truck, and she comes out, and at first she thinks that he killed him, like by accident, and she listens to his heartbeat and stuff. Take him inside, and then that's when we finally get the scene. It must have been a Mandela effect. And oh my god, man, the song is so terrible. It is, I'm telling you, it makes you as crazy as her by the end of this movie. It's just the most poppy, bubblegummy, she sounds like a child singing these lyrics, but it is also catchy. So it's gonna get stuck in your head. And I was giving shit to somebody the other day for putting a song in my head, but that's a great song. This is all on me, but it's so bad. Like, it's ear-piercing, the way she sings. Whatever artist this is, I'm pretty sure now that it is an actual song. I don't think it was written for this. Then we see her putting her scrapbook together. And I like how she draws the heart around Brent's face and then has the circle right here because of her plan to lobotomize him. Man, what is with all the incest lately in the movies I've been watching? The last video, or the podcast episode on Amityville 2, you got the brother and sister thing. And then I totally forgot about this in this movie. There's like this weird incestual relationship between Lola and her father, because you see her in a room after the father gives her her dress that he bought her for prom. Nice dress, and it's all in pink, of course, because she's Miss Bubblegum, the music she listens to. But then she just like strips down to her undergarments to put this dress on, say like, tell me how I look. And then you see this like weird look from the father, like he's looking but he doesn't want to look. So there's this whole weird subplot with that in this movie. I don't know what it is with these last two films, because like I said, she's a very good looking girl, Lola. So in any other context, that would be a great scene, you know, seeing her just, you don't see anything, but it's nice. She's getting dressed, but that's the only situation really where that's a buzzkill, is where you're seeing her father look at her. Then there's no type of that reaction to it. It's just disgust and weirdness. And yeah, that song plays through that entire bedroom scene. But you see Brent tied up and he's sitting at the table, like in the kitchen. And this movie is shot really, really well. The way they dress up the whole kitchen to look like the prom, and the disco ball light that keeps going around, and all of that makes that whole location, because they're in this kitchen for a long time, except for, if I recall, when they keep switching back to the friend and goth girl. But she really acts nuts, and that she doesn't care at all. He wakes up, the father's there at the table, she's at the table, and then there's a woman there who's lobotomized that they call Bright Eyes. Now I remember, it turns out that's her mom. I think that it was very obvious, even on the first watch, that I immediately thought it was her mom. Tell me if you've seen this movie, if that was like a twist or surprise to you at the end of this, because I definitely, as soon as they sat down, I thought this, and you see how crazy the father and Lola is. Of course they'd be that crazy that to do something like that, to lobotomize her mother. Of all the crazy bitches in these four movies, Lola in this movie is the craziest one. Like, it, not even a thought in my mind or a debate on it or anything. You have Annie in Misery. Yeah, she's really nuts, and she hobbles James Caan. But she's like a real obsessed fan. She's not drilling into people's heads and having weird feelings with her daddies. So she trumps Annie for me. And then, like I said with Possession in that video, there's outside forces at play. There's a whole doppelganger creature thing. So that makes more sense, even though I think Anna's character was absolutely insane before all of those events happen in their life. And then you have May from May. And she might be the least craziest out of all of them. I feel like she's more just like nerdy and quiet and awkward. And then she just snaps at some point. We'll talk about it with May and go deeper into that. But out of all four of them, Lola in this movie she is deranged. And so is her father. Just the whole fact, the thought, and yeah, I'm sure it's happened, that a father would participate and let his teenage daughter torture victim after victim, like every year, because they say no to her to go to prom with her. I'm pretty sure that's her only reason, aside from just being sick in the head and likes torturing people. And then it's sick when she says take a picture right after she injects him in the neck with bleach to like cut his voice out completely, mess up his vocal cords, he can't talk or anything. And she's just so happy. And when they do that, both of them, when he screams, like before his voice goes out, both of them at the same time, the father and her, say, "We can't hear you," like they're mocking him. That's how sick these people are. And then she says, take a picture. And she runs behind the chair all smiling. And then he says, say happy. She snaps a picture. And then he says, bring Bright Eyes in for a quick photo op. And that's not hilarious at all, that they drag this lobotomized woman next to this guy who was just injected with bleach into his neck to take another family date photo. Remember all the stuff I was saying about Mia is her name, the goth chick. Finally got it. Fuck if I know the guy's name. And I know I've heard it already. They're in the car, like outside of prom, and they're getting hammered. So when that's involved, anything could happen. So I retract my statements of not believing this. Oh, and the fact that they dressed him up while he was unconscious, Brent, when they first brought him home in a tuxedo with a bow tie and stuff. I mean, yeah, it's supposed to be a dance at her house in her sick mind, but great touch anyway. Yeah, she just does a great job, and she is so creepy in this movie. This is why I picked the 4 movies that I did, because I think every one of the lead female actresses in those 4 films just all give exceptional performances and just really convey how nuts they are. And like I said, I think she's the most twisted, like by far. She takes like a chicken leg and she starts like moving it around her mom's mouth, the lobotomized mom, and she's insulting her. She starts taking the milk and starts just shoving it down her throat, and it's spilling out of her. Then she goes and she wants to do the same thing to him, the chicken leg, and he can still talk a little bit, like barely, but there's still some sound because she asked him, like, is it finger licking good? Like, and he can't answer, and he won't. And the father like smashes a hammer on the table after the 3rd time, and he gets out like, yes. And then he does have some other sounds. For some reason I thought that like it completely, he had no voice after that. And don't forget, all the crazy stuff that she's done so far is nothing near where we go in this movie. And this is how you build goddamn tension in a scene. When he has to piss, and she's, that's when she's saying with the finger licking good and stuff, and she's making him lick her finger before she'll let him go to the bathroom. And then she just takes his dick out. I think it's hilarious. She takes a glass of milk like it's filled. She just chugs it. One gulp, all of it. And then uses that glass for him to piss in. But then she tells him, you have 10 seconds to go, or my father's going to take the hammer and nail it to the chair. Do you know how hard it is to go to the bathroom under those circumstances when you got this crazy lunatic that is going to nail your penis to the chair if you can't piss in 10 seconds, and you're not to mention everything that you've been through already. And then she ends up getting like turned on by this while he goes. And then right when it almost hits 10 seconds, it comes out. But it's so tense the way it builds because of that 10-second countdown. And also, it's not going to happen. He's going to be able to go right at the last second. But it's so effective. It's very well done. Like, I didn't remember that scene being that good. And disturbing, of course. And then she says it looks sad. Oh, no, she says it's crying. Just the things she comes out with. And she said, maybe I should kiss it better. And then she just flies back up, and she doesn't kiss it, I guess. She flies back up and says, or maybe I'll bite it off so his girlfriend can never kiss it again. I'm telling you, this woman is the sickest out of all of them. But then he's able to escape very briefly. And it's a very suspenseful scene, too. He kicks her with his legs, and he's able to get his arms free, and he hops out of there because he's still tied up, I guess, at the legs. He's hopping, and then he gets himself free, and he's running, and the father gets in the car, and then he basically starts chasing him down, and he climbs up into a tree, and they're throwing rocks up at him, Lola and the father, trying to hit him like he's a cat stuck in the tree. And like the 3rd or 4th rock, whatever, that she throws hits him in the head, and he ends up falling out of it. And they just bring him right back in. Oh, can you imagine, like, just that little glimmer of hope that you got out? Like, you were able to get out of that house, even if it was for a split second. That gives you a little bit of hope. And then all of it's shattered when you come to again out of consciousness and you're back in that chair. And then they take knives and stick it through his feet to pin them to the ground so he can't go anywhere. And all that looks cool, and it's very disturbing. Then she asks him to cry. Like, she's almost like Jigsaw. Or, depending who's doing what in that series, more like maybe Amanda or Hoffman, because they put people in traps with no intention of getting out. So she's kind of like a female Hoffman or just the same-sex Amanda, asking him to piss on command in 10 seconds or her nails going through it. Then she says cry on command, and he doesn't. He resists it, and every time he does, the father hammers the knife again, like further into his foot, over and over again, like 4 or 5 times. Let me say, this father here must have been like a hammer connoisseur before he retired or whatever he did, because he does everything with that hammer. He uses it to knock out Brent, so he probably uses it on all the previous victims. He killed Brent's dog after he tried committing suicide and then, decided not to. And they say the same thing, that he used the hammer and the nail. Then the same thing for his penis if he doesn't go to the bathroom. Same thing with the hammer through his feet. What is this guy's obsession with hammers? I want to know his hammer backstory. Then we get a nice scene with Carla, Brent's mom, and Brent's girlfriend. But they're saying to each other about everything that happened with the father. The mom tells Holly that she knows that Brent thinks that she blames him for what happened to her husband, his father. And there's some touching dialogue there. All the stuff revolving Brent's backstory and accidentally killing his father and the guilt shown throughout this movie by him and the mother, all of that is very well written, is very well done, and it makes you feel so much more sorry for this guy and bad for him of what he's going through after he already went through that, and he's self-harming himself. He already wants to end it. He almost tried. And now he's being tortured beyond belief at prom with this sick bitch, her incestuous father, and her lobotomized mother. Alright, now, like, seeing it play out, it's starting to come back to me. She starts showing her scrapbook to Brent and showing all the past prom dates, victims, and it's funny, she is so humiliating to, I'm guessing, all her victims, because this is how she is, but to him in this movie. And what they do to him, like, still, of everything she's done so far, we're still nowhere near. Like, the worst. And then he recognizes in the scrapbook the brother of the goth girl that's at the prom, and they didn't go in. Like, they're just hanging out in the car, drinking, smoking, then they start having sex. They're having a good time, at least. But then Lola takes a fork and carves a big heart in his chest. He's bleeding profusely, and then they take salt and start spraying it onto him, and he's in agonizing pain. Like, they're getting up into his face and laughing and making snarky comments. All the camera work and the editing there is really cool, and it really makes it feel like you're there and you're deranged yourself. Like, that's how it's shot. It's shot very derangedly, for a lack of a better word, or a word that even is a word. But when he noticed the brother of the goth girl in the scrapbook, it turns out that he is the guy who was traveling down the road in the middle of the road at the very beginning of the movie that caused Brent and his dad to swerve and ended up killing his father. So I forgot all about that, but I love how all of that circles back and that it's connected. And I guess that explains the behavior and personality of Mia, the goth chick. because then you find out that her brother was a victim of hers. So it explains that she's going through a hard time. Janie, that's the friend of Brent's name. Finally, Jamie and Mia, they do go in to prom, like for a dance or so, and then they get thrown out for like, you know, inappropriate behavior. She's like jerking him off or something on the dance floor, and I guess somebody, the teacher or principal, who knows, comes up, says, yeah, I suggest if you want to do that, you do it somewhere else, and then they go back in the car. But when it cuts to the next scene, first of all, you have the annoying as shit catchy song playing again, and she's straddling Brent, and they're dancing. Well, she's dancing with him. He can barely move. And man, rewatching this, I forgot so much of this movie. I mean, I've only seen this like twice, but I remember like the plot and that fucked up stuff happens. I mean, the things that stick with you, but I forgot a bunch of stuff. But she says to Brent, like, you're not him. And she steps onto the, like, slams her foot onto one of the knives to one of his feet. Vicious. And then she takes her father's hand to dance. And the annoying ass song is playing again. And then they start saying just the creepiest shit. Well, she does. The father doesn't really talk much. He says a few things here and there. But they're looking at each other, and it's so friggin' awkward and weird. And she says, like, no wonder why, like, it's never been any of them, and it's always been you. And then they go, like, fucking an inch away from kissing. And then Brent, like, falls down a bit in the chair, and that distracts them, and they look over. Thank God, man. I mean, I forgot how much of the incest stuff is in this movie. I forgot about it pretty much completely. Man, what a prick this teacher, principal, whatever is. He asked them go somewhere else when they were dancing in the prom. So then they're banging in the car. And then he, again, foggy windows, and one of them has to brush it. And they roll the window down. And he says, when I said go somewhere else to do that, I meant off school property. And walks away. This guy is like, I don't know, he's like the sex police. And then this is when this movie just goes absolutely off the rails, insane. And it's shot so well. Like, it really affects you when you watch everything that happens from this point on. So the father ends up opening a trap door in the kitchen. And then you see all the previous victims, the lucky guys who got to go on prom with her, and they're all lobotomized down there. And they look like, not like bat creatures from The Descent. Think of those, but without any of the bad attributes and a big ass hole in their head. And they live down there. That's creepy as shit on its own. But then she goes over to him, and she starts drilling into his head to lobotomize him. And the father's instructing her and saying, like, don't go too deep. And then tells her when to stop. All of that. Oh, you feel his pain so bad. Like, it hurts watching it. And then they have to drill deeper because she's trying to pour I don't know what it is, but whatever it is, she's trying to pour it into the hole. And he says it's got to be bigger. And they start doing it again. And then he's finally able to escape. I guess it's a little convenient with the necklace, with the razor blade that he uses to harm himself. He's able to free himself with that. And he slashes the dad with it. Then he takes the knife out of his foot and he stabs the shit out of that incestuous dad. He pushes him down into the cellar, and then, like, all the lobotomized people down there start eating, like, his body and stuff. It's so out there, this movie. But then Lola is furious that the love of her life is dead. And then she pushes Brent down into the cellar with all the deformities. And I don't know, this is also kind of convenient. He just like finds a flashlight down there and he's able to shine it at them. I guess they never see light. Just, I don't know, feels a little convenient, but it's not bad. Oh, that's right. So then Mia and her brother, who is the one that got away from the house and caused the car accident that killed Brent's dad, their father is a cop. And because this is only taking place throughout a few hours, on prom night. And Holly, the girlfriend, gets concerned, and even though the mom's been freaking out this whole time, same with Holly, like they know that something happened, but he was supposed to meet her somewhere, and when he doesn't, then she ends up calling Mia's father, and then he immediately walks into that house and gets Dick Haller, and she takes something and smashes him in the face with it, and he falls into the pit. But then Brent is able to take the gun off of him and try shooting up at Lola. She doesn't get hit. So let's recount so far. This poor guy has lost his father and thinks it's his fault and blames himself to the point that he wanted to die. Then you get knocked out. Then you get threatened. And then you get injected with bleach. Then you get an ultimatum that either you gotta pee right now or it's getting nailed to a chair. Then you have knives shoved down both of your feet, pinning you to the ground. Then he gets carved up and gets the salt thrown on him. Then he gets drilled through his head. And now he's thrown down into a cellar with a bunch of cannibalistic, lobotomized people. I mean, this might be up there with one of the characters I feel worst for what they go through in a horror film. Alright, so the ending of this movie is pretty badass. She ends up leaving to go complete her missions, and Holly, the girlfriend, is driving down the same road, like going towards each other, and then she sees Lola bloodied in her pink dress and stuff, and she has her scrapbook, and she ends up throwing it at the car. And then she stops the car, and Lola starts trying to kill the shit out of her. Holly ends up leaving. This, I don't know how I feel about, but I mean, it's a little thing. And the rest of this ending is great. He escapes from taking, I guess there's dead ones down there, and piles the corpses on top of each other so that he's able to climb out of the cellar. I mean, I don't know, but whatever at this point. And then he escapes in the cop's car. And it's kind of cool, even though this would never, the probability of this exact type of situation happening twice to somebody has to be like astronomical, that this would happen again. He almost hits Holly, and he has to swerve again like he did, which killed his father in the beginning of the movie. Except this time when he swerves to miss his girlfriend, he crashes the shit into Lola, and she fucking falls onto the pavement. But regardless of that being just ridiculous that would ever happen twice to somebody, the exact same situation, but it is cool that the first time it happened, he killed someone he cared for so deeply. The second time it happened, he was swerving from someone he cares about so deeply and ended up killing the woman that deserves it more than anybody in the world to him. And this psychotic woman is still on the ground. She has the knife. She's crawling, like trying to pull herself back towards them. And great. He just backs up the police car, and it goes into like slow motion a little bit. It's good though. And she's looking at the police car, just approaching her. And then it just smacks her right in the face. He runs over her, and it quick cuts. You don't see much, but you do feel it. Like when that car hits her head and it flies back, it cuts immediately, but it looks good. It sounds great. It's pretty gnarly. And then, I mean, Holly is just astonished that what happened to her boyfriend, and they end up going back home to his house, and the three of them are just so happy that he's alive. But I don't know how I'd feel after all that. I mean, yeah, most of his wounds physically could probably be fixed. I mean, he wasn't lobotomized. They didn't complete that process. But mentally, man, I don't know. That's a lot. Like, so much to deal with. You know how much money that would cost in therapy for the rest of your life to handle all of that shit you've been through? Just on that one night, let alone how he was feeling before that. Like I said, I feel so terrible for what happens to this guy. And that's why this movie is so effective and is so disturbing. And that's the end. So that's Loved Ones from 2009. I'm pretty sure the director, Sean Byrne, he only did this movie. I'm pretty sure because I looked it up before I started recording. Pretty sure that he did short films and this was his first feature film, and I didn't see anything after that. But I'd really like to see another movie from him, especially after this rewatch, because like I said, I was blown away almost by how much I didn't remember correctly or things I flat out forgot from this movie. It kind of, I guess, all blends together because it's a rubber band ball of chaos and depravity that goes on throughout all this movie. So it leaves the impression of this movie is great but disturbing, but then you try to forget some of the things that this guy goes through. The craziest bitch of the tetralogy. Alright guys, hope everyone's having a good morning, afternoon, or night. I don't know what the next of the four will be. Maybe I'll put a poll up between Misery and May. I know which one's going to blow the other one away though. So, we'll see. Have a good night, everybody. So, people who haven't seen it, you got enough information. Information. Then he gets... This movie's so deranged because you can never mentally, emotionally escape from the traumatic thing, like what they go through from this woman's hands, girl's hands. She's 17 and there's 18. It doesn't matter. And she asks him if he would go to the dance with him. With her, God, fuck you. He didn't give the answer. I can't say that with a straight face. He says, when I said somewhere else, I did not... No, he says, do mean. Alright, so I'm at the point that I'm just taking this confirmation, because I doubt that Brent, like, flops, and then he knocked Brent out with it, so I guess he uses that for all the previous victims, and, well, there are no future ones. At prom,